My name is Iris. And this is the story of how I went from being called worthless to becoming the woman an entire family could not survive without. They say words cannot kill. But whoever said that has never felt the sharp edge of the wrong word slice through their chest and bury them alive. For years I was called too much. Too emotional. Too dependent. Too needy. Too much of a burden. Especially by the man who once held my hand and promised to love me through everything. His name was Adrian. We met in college during a rainy September evening when I was rushing to my literature class with a coffee in one hand and a stack of books in the other. He was standing under the awning of the library, shaking water from his jacket, and when I passed by, I tripped. Books scattered everywhere. He bent down to help me, smiled, and said, "Looks like your story just got a little messy, eh?" I laughed. And somehow, from that moment we became inseparable. Adrian was charming, confident, the kind of man who walked into any room and people noticed. He had this energy, this presence that made you feel like everything would be okay as long as he was around. I was studying literature, working night shifts at a diner to cover my tuition. My life was chaotic, messy, exhausting. But when I was with him, I felt grounded. He used to say I made him feel human. I used to say he made me feel seen. We graduated together. We moved into a small apartment with cracked tiles and a leaking faucet. We talked about the future like it was something we were building with our bare hands. But life has a way of testing you when you least expect it. A few months after graduation, I lost my job. The company I worked for went under. I sent out application after application, but nothing came back. Then my mother got sick. Cancer. The bills started piling up. Hospital visits. Medications. Rent. Groceries. Everything felt like it was crashing down at once. I could not contribute much anymore. I was barely holding myself together. And Adrian started to change. First it was small things. A sigh when I talked about job interviews. A roll of his eyes when I mentioned how tired I was. The way he would turn away when I tried to hold his hand. But I told myself it was stress. That he was just dealing with his own pressure at work. That we would get through it. Until one night during dinner everything shattered. We were sitting across from each other at our tiny kitchen table. I had made pasta, something cheap and simple. I was telling him about a potential job lead, trying to sound hopeful, trying to keep the mood light. And then he slammed his fork down. The sound echoed in the silence. "Iris, stop." I looked up at him, confused. "Stop what?" "This," he said coldly, gesturing at me like I was some kind of problem he could not solve. "All of this. The constant struggling. The excuses. The waiting for things to get better." My chest tightened. "I am trying, Adrian. You know I am trying." "Are you?" he shot back. "Because from where I am sitting it looks like you are just stuck. And I am the one pulling all the weight." Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "I have been by your side for 6 years," I whispered. "Through everything. I supported you when you were figuring things out. I never once made you feel like you were too much." He laughed bitterly. "That is the difference, Iris. I actually figured it out. You are still drowning. And honestly, I cannot keep carrying you." The words hit me like a physical blow. "You are a burden," he continued, his voice flat and emotionless. "And I am tired of pretending that I can handle it." For a moment I could not breathe. I just sat there, staring at him, trying to process what he had just said. The man I loved, the man I thought would stand by me no matter what, had just called me a burden. I did not say anything. I could not. I stood up slowly, walked to our bedroom, and started packing my things. He did not try to stop me. He did not apologize. He just sat there at the table staring at his plate, while I shoved clothes into a duffel bag with trembling hands. I left that night. No plan. No money. No idea where I was going. Just a broken heart and a fire inside me that refused to go out. For the first few months I survived on scraps. I stayed on a friend's couch. Took temp jobs wherever I could find them. Walked for hours through the city because I could not afford the bus and I needed to clear my head. Some nights I cried until I could not breathe. Other nights I stared at the ceiling and felt nothing at all. But every single time I wanted to give up, I heard his voice in my head. "You are a burden." And I refused to let that be my story. I started studying finance online. I did not know much about it, but I knew I needed to understand money, how to manage it, how to build something stable. I slept 4 hours a night. I worked during the day and studied at night. I applied for an entry-level job at a non-profit organization that helped low-income families manage their finances. They hired me. It was not much. The pay was low. The work was hard. But it was a start. And I held on to it like my life depended on it. Because in many ways it did. I worked harder than anyone else. I stayed late. I took on extra projects. I learned everything I could. Within a year I was promoted to analyst. Within 2 years I was leading a team. Within 5 years I was a director. And then I did something I never thought I would be able to do. I started my own consultancy, a firm dedicated to helping struggling families rebuild their finances after hardship. People who had lost jobs, dealt with medical bills, faced bankruptcy. People like me. The business grew faster than I ever imagined. Word spread. Families started reaching out from all over the state. I hired a small team. We worked out of a modest office downtown. But the impact we were making was real. I was no longer surviving. I was thriving. And the woman who had once been called a burden became the person people leaned on when they had lost everything. The irony was not lost on me. Years passed. I built a name for myself. I spoke at conferences. I was featured in local business magazines. My firm was recognized for the work we did. I was proud of what I had accomplished. But I never forgot where I came from. I never forgot the night Adrian told me I was too much to carry. And then one morning the past came knocking. It started with an email. The subject line read, "Financial crisis. Urgent consultation request." I opened it casually, expecting another client inquiry. But when I saw the sender's name, my heart stopped. Laura Kincaid, Adrian's sister. I stared at the screen, my hands frozen over the keyboard. She did not know it was me. The email was professional, formal. She explained that her family's construction business was on the verge of bankruptcy. Their accountant had disappeared. Debts were overdue. They were drowning in financial chaos. She wrote that they were desperate for help, that they did not know who else to turn to. I sat there for a long time, reading and rereading the email. Part of me wanted to delete it, to pretend I never saw it, to let them figure it out on their own. But another part of me, the part that had clawed my way out of rock bottom, wanted to see this through. So I replied. I scheduled a meeting. And when the day came, I walked into their office with my head held high. The building was older than I remembered. The paint was peeling. The reception area was cluttered with boxes and paperwork. Laura greeted me at the door. She was warm, polite, clearly stressed. "Thank you so much for coming," she said, shaking my hand. "We really appreciate it." I smiled. "Of course. Let us see what we are working with." She led me to a conference room. And that is when I saw him. Adrian. He was sitting at the table, flipping through a folder, his brow furrowed in concentration. He looked older, thinner, tired. The confidence he once carried like armor was gone, replaced by something fragile and worn. When he looked up and saw me, his face went pale. "Iris." His voice was barely a whisper. I met his eyes calmly. "Hello, Adrian." For a moment he just stared at me like he was seeing a ghost. Laura looked between us, confused. "You two know each other?" "We do," I said smoothly. "It has been a while." Adrian opened his mouth, but no words came out. I turned to Laura. "Shall we get started?" Over the next hour, Laura explained everything. The company was hemorrhaging money. Contracts had fallen through. Suppliers were threatening to pull out. They were weeks away from complete collapse. I listened carefully, took notes, asked questions. Adrian barely said a word. He just sat there, staring at me like he could not believe I was real. When the meeting ended, I stood and gathered my things. "I will put together a preliminary assessment and send it over by the end of the week," I said. "We will go from there." Laura looked like she wanted to cry with relief. "Thank you," she said. "Truly. Thank you." I nodded and walked toward the door. But as I reached for the handle, Adrian finally spoke. "Iris, wait." I paused but did not turn around. "Can we talk?" "Just for a minute." I looked back at him. His eyes were pleading. I considered it for a moment. Then I said, "There is nothing to talk about, Adrian. This is business. Let us keep it that way. And I walked out. Over the next few months, I worked tirelessly to save their company. I restructured their debt, negotiated new contracts, found new suppliers, streamlined their operations. It was not easy. There were late nights, tough calls, moments where it felt like the whole thing might still fall apart. But I did not give up. And slowly the business started to stabilize. Laura was incredible to work with. She trusted me completely, followed every recommendation, and worked just as hard as I did. Adrian, on the other hand, stayed in the background. He watched. He listened. But he rarely spoke. I could feel his eyes on me during meetings, could sense the weight of everything unsaid between us. But I did not give him the satisfaction of acknowledging it. As the months went on, the Kincaid family started to rely on me more and more. Laura called me for advice on everything. Their mother invited me to family dinners. Their younger brother asked me to mentor him. I became part of their lives in a way I never expected. And Adrian had to watch it all. One evening, after a particularly long meeting, I was packing up my things when he approached me in the parking lot. "Iris." I stopped but did not turn around. "Please," he said quietly. "Just give me a minute." I sighed and faced him. "What do you want, Adrian?" He looked down at his hands. "I want to say I am sorry. I waited. For what I said to you. For how I treated you. You did not deserve that." I crossed my arms. "You are right. I did not." He looked up at me, his eyes filled with regret. "You were never a burden, Iris. I was weak. I was scared. And I took it out on you." I let his words hang in the air for a moment. Then I said, "You were not weak, Adrian. You were cruel. There is a difference." He flinched. "I know," he whispered. "And I have regretted it every single day since." I took a step closer. "Do you know what the worst part was?" I asked. "It was not that you left me. It was that you made me believe I was not worth staying for." Tears welled up in his eyes. "I am so sorry." I nodded slowly. "I believe you. But that does not change anything." "Why not?" "Because I do not need your apology, Adrian. I needed it 6 years ago. Now, I am fine without it." He looked broken. "You saved us," he said. "You saved my family. You saved me." I smiled sadly. "I did not do it for you. I did it because it was the right thing to do." And with that I walked away. Months later, the Kincaid Construction Company was back on its feet. They were profitable again. Thriving even. Laura sent me flowers after every milestone. Their mother hugged me every time I visited. And Adrian? He stayed quiet. Always watching. Always trying to find the right words. But never quite managing to say them. I moved on with my life. My consultancy continued to grow. I was invited to speak at conferences, featured in magazines, recognized as one of the top women in business in the state. I built a life I was proud of. A life where I was no longer defined by what someone else thought of me. Every year, the Kincaid family sends me Christmas cards. Laura's kids call me Aunt Iris. Their mother still thanks me for saving their name. And Adrian? He does not say much anymore. But I know he sees me. On magazine covers. At charity events. On lists of successful entrepreneurs. He once said I would never stand on my own. Now, his whole family stands because I refused to fall. I do not hate him. I do not even think about him most days. But sometimes when I am speaking on a stage or closing a major deal, I remember that night at the kitchen table. I remember the way he looked at me and said I was too much. And I smile. Because he was wrong. I was not too much. I was exactly enough. He just was not strong enough to see it. If someone ever calls you a burden, do not waste your energy proving them wrong with anger. Prove them wrong with success so loud it echoes. Build a life so full, so powerful, so undeniable that they cannot help but see it. Because one day they will realize the truth. You were never too heavy. They were just too weak to carry your greatness. And by then, you will be long gone, standing tall, surrounded by people who know your worth. People who would never let you fall. Because you are not a burden. You are a force. And the world is finally starting to see it. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that you are stronger than anyone ever made you feel, then please subscribe to our channel. We share stories of resilience, transformation, and the power of never giving up. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join a community of people who believe that your past does not define your future. Because you are not a burden. You are unstoppable. And we are here to remind you of that every single day. Thank you for watching.